Seems like it. Good evening and welcome to the Grand Prairie City Council meeting for Monday, November 16th, 2015. I'd ask everyone in attendance to rise and join us in singing O Canada. Thank you to the National Film Board of Canada for the images of our country and to our very own Grand Prairie Boys Choir for the audio. We'd move on to the adoption of previous council meeting minutes. Can I have a motion for that set of minutes? Thank you, Councillor Rice.
I move adoption of the minutes of the City Council meeting held November 2nd.
Thanks very much, Councillor Rice. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Does it look like it captured the meeting correctly? I don't see anybody ringing in, so it must. I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Now we're looking for a motion for the adoption of the agenda. And Council, just as a reminder, we have two additional items that we need to add to the agenda. The first is appointments to boards and committees, and the second one is recommendations for appointments to the Board of Aquaterra. I'd recommend that those be added as items 8.1, boards and committees, and 8.2, Aquaterra. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Bill. I move that Council adopt the agenda as amended.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on the agenda? Again, I don't see anybody ringing in, so I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. And this brings us to the delegation portion of our agenda. This is an opportunity that we have at every regular City Council meeting for any member of the community to come and speak to Council. Tonight we had one delegation let us know ahead of time that they're going to be here, and that's from the Community Foundation with regards to their vital signs. I see Ms. Favrick here. Tracy, come on down. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, Mayor Given and Council members. It's fabulous to be able to share with you about vital signs. Some of you were able to join us for our launch, but I'd like to dive in a little bit deeper into vital signs to give you a bit of an update on where vital signs is at this time and also a bit from the national perspective. So on October the 9th, we were very fortunate to have a very large grouping of members that joined us at the Centre 2000 to launch this report. This is our Grand Prairie and Areas report. And at the same time, we had our national organization, Community Foundations of Canada, also as well launched their report on belonging. From a national perspective, we had 28 other community foundations throughout the nation and then 14 also in the UK. So the project's really growing, and you can see that it's being welcomed through numerous municipalities and communities as well. The Grand Prairie Vital Signs report provides us with a snapshot of our community, including the City of Grand Prairie and the County of Grand Prairie. And this is new for this project. In the past, it's just been specifically the City of Grand Prairie. We're pleased to have the County of Grande Prairie as a partner with us too as well. So with your partnership, you've partnered with us on the capacity of funding and also in the capacity of providing resources to us. This has been immense as a result of the project. it really helps us to gain knowledge and information and give us a good perspective of the community. Vital signs is a snapshot where we take 11 indicator areas and we overlap those areas and look at the community in depth in those areas. So we are diving deeper into the areas. And specifically we do that so we can understand those areas. We also as well reach out to the community and we conduct surveys. This report encompassed 2 community surveys. One was youth-based, up to the age of 24, and then one for the general community. And we have to say we're really thrilled. I'm going to be honest, we were overwhelmed with the response from the survey participants. Survey participants are important because they also give us the perceptions of community, and we know that is important to us because when you start to take data and you combine it with perceptions, you can get 2 unique stories. They may not be the same, but they can be very unique, and they tell us different messages. Our youth survey, we had double the respondents of what we'd had prior. There was 1,435 youth that responded to us. As I say, we were very, very impressed with and overwhelmed with the numbers. Our community survey was 1,238 members from the region that as well completed the survey. So again, this is important. We, with double the numbers, we hear that our community is saying a voice is important to them. And we value that we've given them, through the partnership and the support of through the city and other partners, the opportunity to have that platform. The Community Foundation is ideal to do this because we're the neutral body. We are managed for all sectors of the community and don't have one specific sector that we favor or we look towards. Very impressed to that again. Jobs and opportunity were something that were highlighted by our community survey respondents. And they felt that this was, they told us they highly valued the opportunities. Now, we have seen a difference in the economy, so I would estimate when we do the next survey, we might see some differences in that. But I really value as well that our 62% of our surveys came back and said they feel Grande Prairie is a great place to raise a family. And we did see that as well in our 2011 and our 2013 survey. So it's exciting to see that. We know that this draws people to our region. And we also know that, as you're very much aware, we've seen an immense draw with our community growing by 18,000 people over the past 8 years. So we also know that the county is experiencing also strong growth. These can bring us opportunities and these can bring us challenges. The college has addressed the growth as well on a post-secondary level, and they're also looking at how they can respond directly to these needs. And with the planning of the new hospital, they've brought forward 6 new allied health programs that will commence at Grande Prairie Regional Hospital. So that's a wonderful gift to the community as well. And we know that it's vitally needed. And we were just reviewing our student award applications, doing the final review of them today. And my estimation would be that at least 70% of those applications that applied to the foundation were in a nursing or a health-related program. So we also see there's interest from our post-secondary students. In 2013-14 and the 14-15 academic year, we also saw an increase of over 200 apprenticeships seats at Grande Prairie Regional College. And over the 2-year time, there was a 77% in female students in those seats. We also know that Aboriginal communities that have maintained more elements of their culture and a greater sense of self-governance feel more individual and more welcoming in their community and also as well with their identity. And Grande Prairie Regional College, through a partnership with the Friendship Center, has the only on-site, on-campus Friendship Center program that supports our Aboriginal students to help them to merge into the transition of post-secondary. We also know that belonging is a key element in the curriculum for early childhood education across Canada. And many of you have seen the early childhood mapping program that was released in our community last year, and it highlights different areas of our community, and it articulates very well where we have some weaknesses in learning and where we have some areas that our community is growing. We have seen that preschool children's ability across both the city and the county are varying. One area of the city is reporting an average of 66% of children were developing appropriately in language and thinking skills. Well, another area of the city reported that an average of 90% of children were developing appropriately. So So we're very fortunate to have that report to help us as we move forward in our community and look at ways we can address maybe early literacy issues. The value of the study also extends beyond the education system. It's also a critical tool for our citizens and our community service providers so they can assess where those resources are needed. And over the past year, there's been a lot of discussion in the media in our community about childhood immunization. Most areas we're reporting right now have seen an increase in participation between 2013 and 2014. As well, this year's Vital Signs Community Survey mirrored past surveys, with respondents telling us that recreation was in their top 4 strengths of the city of Grande Prairie. We have seen our obesity rates continuing to rise, as we are still well above the provincial and national rates. And our region's physical activity rates are declining, where 64.8% of youth are reporting being active during their leisure time, which is an 8% decrease from the year prior. So it's important we as a community continue to be attentive to providing recreational activities and opportunities for those of all income levels. Since our 2013 Vital Signs report, the city has added 22 kilometers to its trail system, bringing the total to almost 95 kilometers of trails. As well, there's an array of trails in the county, which includes 18 kilometers of paved trails that are in very close proximity to the city. Some of you have heard me say this, but I think it's really exciting. If you combine those, that's like riding your bike to Valley View right now. So that is tremendous for our community, and kudos to the city for ensuring we continue to expand upon our walking trails for our community. And belonging is not just a feeling, it is a powerful catalyst for healthier and more cohesive, inclusive communities. And that's what Vital Signs aims for. 20% of our adults and 27% of our youth and young adults in the Grande Prairie area are feeling hardly or not at all connected to their community. With just over half of our city respondents and 63% of our county respondents telling us that they feel they know their neighbors well enough to ask for assistance. But we are seeing a lower response in our youth and our young people. So when we look at this, how does this compare with our national study on belonging that was conducted this past August by Angus Reid for Community Foundations of Canada? About 1/3 of Canadians are reporting a weak sense of belonging in their communities. So this statistic closely mirrors our own result. So we're not in a challenge that's unique to our community. This is something that we're facing through all of our communities across Canada. And as we become more diverse, we have to strengthen our communities with one another. And that's why the Community Foundation's annual Random Act of Kindness Day is about doing more than just nice things and connecting with people around you, but it's also about inspiring Canadians and locally our own citizens to have a stronger sense of belonging. Random Act of Kindness Day has inspired our community to look at ways to be more inclusive and connected. And as we've just celebrated this day, we were overwhelmed with the response that we had. Communities in which there are many social connections are more resilient during emergency events. As crime is listed as the top concern of our survey respondents in both the city and the county, what can we do now? Well, however, we know that there's a concern, but when we increase our sense of belonging, we are also better equipped as a community to respond. And we saw this in Slave Lake when Slave Lake had the fire as well in their community. When communities are made up of people who feel they belong and they trust each other, neighborhoods are safer. And as connectedness among people in communities increases, so does neighborhood safety and a sense of community pride. Vital Sign reported the great successes with the 12 neighborhood associations in Grande Prairie, double the numbers from 2013. And in the county, we've also seen where the communities have band together for the active Rural Crime Watch associations and citizens on patrol. Supportive interaction among people in a neighborhood is one of the strongest factors found in increasing community belonging. We have a very dynamic arts and culture community, and our survey respondents reminded us of how important this is to our citizens. the arts play an integral role in the well-being of communities and, again, as well, increases our sense of belonging. A Canadian study highlighted the value, showing that people who participated in cultural activities had higher volunteer rates and are more likely to report good or excellent mental health, and are more likely to have done a favor for a neighbor. So it all is tying together. And libraries, as we know, and I understand Councillor Radburn has recently joined our Grande Prairie Library Board, but libraries are no longer what they used to be when we were growing up. They've now become the hub and also the place where it's important to stay relevant in the digital age. So we're seeing an increase in the electronic books that's actually skyrocketing each year. And it's also become the hub where communities come together as well. And as well, we see it that a vital community is a sustainable community. We're conserving more water, and Aquaterra customers reported a decrease in bottle use of 33%. So that's 33% of fewer plastic bottles in our landfill. So housing of all levels continues to be a priority, and we're seeing important initiatives in this area. The new 150-unit senior facility is planned for Clermont is helping to address some of our waiting lists, the seniors' waiting lists. Odyssey House with a women's shelter has just completed construction of the new 14-suite apartment facility. And as well, since 2009, about 65% of those experiencing homeless in Grande Prairie have been housed by Housing First. Volunteerism is a key factor in boosting connectiveness in our community, and Canadian seniors contributed to the highest rate of annual volunteer hours in 2013. And in the Grande Prairie area, 77% of our city respondents volunteered in the past year. That's tremendous. About 47% of our youth volunteered during the same time. And lack of time was one of the #1 reasons why people of all ages said they could not volunteer. When you're able to volunteer, though, you make a tremendous impact in helping your community be stronger. And when people feel a strong sense of belonging, they participate more in society. The priority of Vital Signs is to engage people, and the Community Foundation shares this with community foundations across the country. Community Foundations of Canada is convening nationally and locally to explore opportunities to share action and engage for healthier communities and a more cohesive, inclusive Canada. And so starting with ourselves, we can take some small steps, and we can do those little extra things for others. And belonging is definitely a collective we. So in conclusion, Vital Signs has a clear understanding of the Grande Prairie area. This report is used at all levels of community within our region and many communities throughout our nation. Since 2011, we've seen projects developed in response to the areas noted in the report. We've seen issues brought forward. We've seen partnerships have been formed. And we've also seen learning institutions have changed the way they do business in supporting the needs of their clients. We've also as well seen local and international funders use Vital Signs as a resource for evaluating local projects and programs. So Vital Signs has shown us that the Grande Prairie area is very innovative and creative and a great place to live in the area. So now, as we look at Vital Signs, it's our opportunity to look at and have further discussions around opportunities so we can look at what the rest of the story will be for our future generations. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Ms. Saverick. Any questions for the delegation? Councillor Logan.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the presentation. Tremendous organization, and you've done a tremendous job in leading it. You talk about the results of the report, talking about a great place to raise a family and community belonging. Of course, you heard the recent news that there's some other aspects of what's going on in this community that aren't so good with regard to crime rates. Is there any way, shape, or form that the foundation, with its information and talent and information gathering, can play any sort of a role in addressing this massive social issue?
Thank you, Councillor Logan. We have been in talks with the RCMP on the current situation and the crime and the concerns of our community. At this time, I don't know what position the foundation can play. say, we look at the community and we know we need to engage our community to take stronger belonging, and that's a focus for us right now. I will be in Toronto. I leave for Toronto tomorrow with my colleagues, and this is on our agenda for our discussion to look at what are other communities across our nation doing. We saw similar in Vancouver when the Vancouver Foundation first started vital signs as well. And part of what they saw was isolation and crime, plus also not feeling they were included in community. So I will be speaking to my colleagues, and I'd be very happy to bring back more later. We do feel Random Act of Kindness Day is a start. We see that as a way of bringing people together, and we saw it this past year. It was immense. I would say that we saw more this year than we've seen in the past, and it was different things we saw. We heard results of very generous people doing small, kind things for people they didn't know, and in the past it's been for colleagues and friends, etc. So I'd love to report back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Logan. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I just wanted to report to Council that last Monday, the delegation, Ms. Vavrick, presented the results of the Vital Signs report to the corporate leadership team and all the city department heads.
Yeah, and thank you for that too as well.
Any other questions for the delegation? Comments? I don't see any. So, Ms. Vavrick, thanks very much for the presentation today, and thanks for all the work and all the community organizations and groups that you worked with to bring this data together. It certainly is an aid to council and a lot of other decision makers and influencers in the community. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, Mayor Given and council members. Okay.
So this is, as I said, the delegation portion of the agenda. We do have this every 2 weeks at our regular city council meetings, and it's an opportunity for anyone in the community to come forward and address council on any community-related matter. You can let us know ahead of time if you'd like to come down, or you can just be here and wave your hand. I don't see anybody else waving their hand in the audience. I know there are some other people that are here for a public hearing, but I certainly want to make sure that the public is aware that this opportunity to address council and present an issue to us does exist, and has always existed with the City of Grande Prairie. Since I don't see anybody else coming forward for the delegation portion of our agenda, we'll move on into public hearings. We have one tonight. For council's information and for the public's information, we're running a little bit of a different process under our new process that council approved with this public hearing. And just want to advise on that. And with that, I'll call the public hearing to order, and I'll look to administration for an introduction.
Thank you, Mayor Given. This is a land use bylaw rezoning amendment, urban reserve to public service. A land use bylaw amendment has been submitted to the City of Grande Prairie. The proposed amendment would change the zoning of the subject area from urban reserve to public service. The rezoning requires amendments to the Arbor Hills Area Structure Plan, and the purpose of the amendment is to designate land for the proposed Arbor Hills 7 to 12 Catholic High School. The subject property is 6.07 hectares in size and is located in the future Arbor Hills neighborhood, north of 132nd Avenue and west of 108th Street. Bear Creek Golf Course is to the west, and the Arbor Hills neighborhood and the Royal Oaks neighborhoods are to the east. The Municipal Development Plan requires 10% dedication of municipal reserve, and this school site will consume all of the required municipal reserve for the land within the quarter section. At the outline plan stage, administration will negotiate for provisional of additional municipal reserve for the neighborhood, for the provision of additional municipal reserve. The MDP also requires amendments to the Arbor Hills Area Structure Plan. The existing development concept for the Arbor Hills Area Structure Plan shows a 3-hectare open space with a proposed recreational facility. This proposed amendment changes the site to a 6-hectare school site, and other adjacent land uses have been modified in order to accommodate this change. Also to note, there's some adjustments to the tables in the area structure plan in other quarter sections due to fixing it to match with the adopted outline plans. The city typically requires an outline plan before zoning and subdivision. However, in this case, the Grande Prairie Catholic School Board has asked the city to expedite this process so that the school can open in 2017. Administration has performed the technical reviews that are normally done at the outline plan stage with respect to transportation and servicing to ensure that they meet the city requirements. The land use bylaw amendment proposes to rezone the 6-hectare parcel from urban reserve to public service. The rezoning would accommodate the development of a junior-senior Catholic high school. Administration is recommending that Council give all 3 readings to Bylaw C-1212F and Bylaw C-1260-44. In order to comply with the requirements of the Municipal Government Act, all of the councillors present must unanimously agree to consider 3rd reading. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Open for questions for administration. Any questions for administration at this point? Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, Mayor Gibbon. Could you please, I'm just noting that the outline plan stage, there may be some negotiation for provision of additional municipal reserve, and you spoke to options that might include municipal reserve transfer or use of the municipal reserve fund. Can you just highlight those 2 particular options and what they look like?
Thank you, Councillor Radbourne. We collect a municipal reserve fund when areas such as industrial areas are developed that we don't provision municipal reserve for. And the purpose of that fund is to create extra municipal reserve where it might be needed. And this might be an instance where that would be an appropriate use because all of the required municipal reserve is used for the one school site, which would mean the rest of the neighborhood wouldn't have parks. So the funds in that reserve could be used. That will be up to council at the time of the outline plan. And the other option is perhaps the developer has another quarter section nearby that has that's under dedicated. Maybe half the quarter section is commercial land, and there's extra municipal reserve available in that quarter section. So that could be used in this quarter section, depending on a negotiation between council and the developer.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Radburn. Any other questions for administration at this point? We'll certainly come back to that if there are others that arise. Okay. Seeing none, then we'll move on to the presentation submission portion of this public hearing. And I'd ask if there's anybody here to speak in favor of the recommended changes. Let's see a couple gentlemen. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Gibbon, councillors. I'm Scott Rossler with Helix Engineering. I have with me Jacob Kilpatrick, also with Helix, working on most of the subdivision servicing and whatnot for this. Scott Pravitz from Provincial Lands was unable to attend tonight, so they are generally present as well, but as the landowner. So on behalf of them, we will be able to answer whatever questions you may have. As discussed, I think Alison said most of the key points in this presentation, but the school site that we do have in front of us was brought forward. It's been bounced around through the county, city, kind of all over the place. They found a location that they like here now. It is serviceable. It's not an easy site to service just due to the fact that it's kind of out in the middle of a field right now. And due to the process and the Catholic School Board's request for us to push this along faster than normal, we are trying to look through that kind of all concurrently. So I might not have all of the answers that you're looking for tonight, but we have been able to address most of the sanitary, water, storm sewer issues that are generally in front of us for this. We are currently also working through an outline plan for the piece of parcel of land for the entire quarter section as well. And as mentioned earlier, one of probably the single most relevant issue that has come forward is the fact that it does tie up a lot of municipal reserve. They actually originally started it well over the 10% dedication. We worked with the architects from Alberta Infrastructure to try to whittle that down to a manageable area. We seem to have managed to do that. Our expectation on the MR is that we will have likely enough MR left over to at least provide a single park for the neighborhood. The neighborhood that is in front of you with Arbor Hills is pretty heavily weighted into the commercial, no industrial, but there's some multifamily in the southern portions of it. It's adjacent to a golf course, so there's some green space there as well. But and a fairly large portion of this plan is unserviceable through the existing infrastructure that's out there today. Only about, actually the school site's pushing it. It is on the limit of where we can get to with sanitary water. So basically to the east of the school site is serviceable, and only the northern portion of the quarter is actually residential. So we're fairly confident that we'll be able to work through the municipal reserve issues. And as Ms. Downing mentioned, there is opportunity. This developer owns the quarter section to the east and portions of the west as well. So there is opportunity to potentially do an MR swap between that one and this. Everything I believe has been dealt with as far as servicing. There are still some things to work out, but we fully expect to be servicing the site by spring. So we'll work through that. And concurrently with that, probably immediately following, there'll be an outline plan adoption to come forward with it. Without anything further, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thanks very much. Any questions for the delegation? I had one, and this may be an outline plan sort of stage question, and if it is, by all means, feel free to tell me so. I just wonder about the golf course to the west and its likelihood of developing or redevelopment. What will happen with the transportation network on the interim?
So transportation we actually have looked at. We did look at accesses to the site and whatnot, and obviously within the development there's a single access off 132nd Ave kind of central to the quarter section. Nothing to the west of that besides the school site and a small commercial site adjacent to it would be available for development, just due to sanitary capacity. There's actually constraints to do that. All of that development will actually occur likely from the west, so it will come from that direction. So the transportation network will stay somewhat disjointed temporarily, but I don't feel like it'll have a huge effect on the neighborhood, just because the road that we do have coming in to the school will loop up to 108th Street and continue through the Arbor Hills East neighborhood. So it'll feel connected, although there'll be a single dead end road at the end of the school. But it will take some time for that to develop. The lift station that services that area is on the west side of 116th Street, American Islands area. So
So fair to say that the transportation network, I mean, everything to the east of the property, will be the transportation network that will develop. Anything to the west is sort of the medium to longer term.
Yep.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other questions for the delegation? I don't see anybody else in the queue, so gentlemen, thanks very much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Councillor, I'm just going to give one last opportunity. Any questions for administration at this point? I don't see any, so Councillor Rice, we'll move on to business arising. And just in terms of our process, Councillor Rice, if you're looking to make motions on business arising, I don't think we need recommendation A. Okay. Thanks, Councillor Rice.
I move first reading of bylaw C-1212F, an application to rezone the subject property from urban reserve to public service.
Okay. I think that's actually I think 1212F is actually the Arbor Hills Area Structure Plan Amendment. Sorry, it's not the rezoning. So it's actually so you're doing the Area Structure Plan Amendment is the first part.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Rice. So motion for first reading. I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Rice.
I move second reading of bylaw C-1212F.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Rice. Any discussion or debate on second reading of this Area Structure Plan Amendment? Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Just a quick question to Ms. Jason Allison. We know why...
Councillor McLean, this is an opportunity for discussion and debate. I made a couple of points about saying,
to
are there any
ask a
questions for administration?
Well, the municipal reserve, I had a question on it. But
Okay, well...
That's fine. Okay.
So go ahead. I'll allow you to ask your question. I checked that a couple of times.
I know you did.
So I want to make sure that we're in discussion and debate on the motion here.
Yeah. So, no, it's okay. Go ahead.
It's not going to affect you on the motion. Okay, thank you. Any discussion or debate on the motion for second reading? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Rice.
I move that third reading be given to bylaw C12.
I think that's the council have. So this is part of our new process, doing all three in one night.
Council have third reading bylaws.
Thanks very much, Councillor Rice. So this is a motion to have third reading of the area structure plan amendment here tonight. In order for this to pass, it needs to be unanimous. If it's not unanimous, then third reading would come back at our subsequent council meeting. Any discussion or debate as to the merits of having third reading here tonight? Seeing nobody ringing in, then I will call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Rice?
I move third reading of bylaw C12.
All right. Thanks very much, Councillor Rice. Any discussion or debate on third reading? Seeing none, call for the vote. Excuse me, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Now we need to move on to our second document to be amended. Can I have a motion for first reading for bylaw C 1260-44? Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that first reading be given to bylaw C-1260-44.
Thanks very much, Councillor Clayton. There's no discussion or debate on first reading. I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Clayton.
I move that second reading be given to bylaw C-1260-44.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Clayton. Any discussion or debate on second reading? At this point, I just would like to take the opportunity to recognize administration and the consultants. Both parties have been working together to support the Catholic School Board. We know that across the province there have been a number of schools that were announced in pretty rapid succession, and I know that as a community certainly we're trying to support our school agencies in making sure that as a municipality we're supporting them and getting these sort of things put together in an organized fashion that meets the timelines that are being driven by the province of Alberta. And so I just want to recognize the partnership that's been happening between our administration and the consultants under, I know that there's a lot of pressure out there in the community to see these new schools into the ground. And so I want to recognize the efforts of both parties and just take that opportunity to do that. Any other discussion or debate on second reading? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Clayton.
Move that council consider giving bylaw C-1260-44 third reading.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Clayton. So a motion to have third reading, same as previous. This is a motion to have or to consider giving third reading. Again, must be unanimous. Any discussion or debate? I don't see any, so I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Clayton.
I move that third reading be given to bylaw C-1260-44.
Thanks very much, Councillor Clayton. Any discussion or debate on third and final reading? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. I think that handles all of our items of business for that public hearing. And we'll move on to item 6.2, City of Grande Prairie Municipal Development Plan, C-1237G, amendments to Map 5 for the Arterial Road Network. We'll look to administration for an introduction.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So this is amendments to the Municipal Development Plan. Administration has initiated an amendment to the Municipal Development Plan. The purpose is to correct inconsistencies between the Municipal Development Plan's Arterial Road Network, Map 5, and the Transportation Master Plan's recommended long-term network map. So the Transportation Master Plan is a more detailed document that guides how and when the transportation is developed, whereas the Municipal Development Plan is a overall vision for the growth and development of the community. The first amendment that the Transportation Master Plan recommended was to remove the extension of 84th Avenue east of 84th Street. And the reason for this is because of the location of Wood Lake. It's important to note that the road network will still be serviced in this area by collector roads, however not an arterial road. The second proposed amendment is to show the 92nd Street extending north of 132nd Avenue as an arterial road. And the purpose of this is to ensure that the 1 mile grid of arterial roads is maintained in order to service the industrial lands within the city and the county. And finally, the third proposed amendment is to expand the boundaries of the map to show the proposed provincial ring road. This map shows the proposed new map that would be in the municipal development plan, which shows the amendments that were shown before. Administration recommends that bylaw C-1237G be given second and third reading.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for administration at this point? Don't see anybody ringing in. So this would normally be the presentation submission portion of the agenda, but there's nobody left in the audience to present or submit. But in fairness, I'll recognize that this is the presentation submission portion of the agenda. If there was anybody who wished to speak to this agenda item, this public hearing, now would be the time. Since there's nobody that's going to come forward, I'll ask council one last time if there are any questions for administration arising. Again, seeing none, then I'll close the public hearing and we'll move on to business arising. Councillor Rice.
Move second reading of bylaw C-1237G.
Thanks very much, Councillor Rice. Any discussion or debate on second reading? Seeing, Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Just obviously the updates are needed, but particularly good to see the proposed ring road as a part of our master plan. That is something that the region has supported as an advocacy item to our provincial government. So it's only in order that we have it in our master transportation.
Thanks, Councillor Radburn. Any further discussion or debate on second reading? Seeing nobody ringing in, then I will call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Rice.
I move third reading of bylaw.
Sorry, Councillor Rice, you just have to get your microphone there, Councillor.
I move third reading of bylaw C-1237G.
Thanks very much, Councillor Rice. Any discussion or debate on third reading? And seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. I think that handles all of our public hearings for this evening. We had no items of unfinished business, but that'll take us to reports where we had our added agenda items. The first is 8.1, appointments to boards and committees. These are recommendations from a council committee of the whole earlier today, and we're going to go through them in order, and we'll see how well everybody can work from the the order sheet that was passed around. But first up is the Arts Development Committee, and Councillor Rice, could you make that motion for appointment?
I move that Doreen to be appointed to the Arts Development Committee for a 3-year term ending December 31st, 2018.
Great. Thanks very much, Councillor Rice. Any discussion or debate on that recommendation, that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. The next is the Combative Sports Commission. Councillor Thiessen, could you make that motion for us?
I sure can, and how appropriate too that I would do this. I move that council approve the appointment of Mr. S. Mills, Mr. B. Mahood, and Mr. D. Haugen to the Combative Sports Commission for 3-year terms ending December 31st, 2018.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. Motion carries. That'll take us to the Community Enhancement Advisory Committee and Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I move that Ms. M. Manick, Mr. L. Coutier, Mr. C. Blackburn, and Ms. S. Neto to be appointed to the Community Enhancement Advisory Committee for a 3-year term ending December 31st, 2018.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. That motion carries. And it'll take us to the Economic Development Advisory Committee. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I move that Mr. D.
Excuse me, I see, recognize Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I excuse myself as I have a conflict as family member is one of the recommended committee members.
Thanks very much, Councillor Arbor, and thanks for that catch. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I move that Mr. D. Radburn and Mr. L. Anderson be appointed to the Economic Development Advisory Committee for a one-year term ending December 31st, 2016.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor McLean. Any discussion or debate on that motion? And seeing nobody ringing in, I'll call for the vote. That motion does carry. We can ask Councillor Radburn back in. And that would take us to the Grand Prairie Public Library Board, and I'd look to Councillor Radburn for a motion on that.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'd move that Ms. N. Bakir be appointed to the Grand Prairie Library Board for a one-year term ending December 31st, 2016.
And I think there are also two other appointments, and we'll do them.
And I'd also move that Mr. M. Evans, Ms. D. Tennant, and Mr. M. Godot be appointed to the Grand Prairie Public Library Board for 3-year terms ending December 31st, 2018.
Thanks, Councillor Radburn. Any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries and would take us to the Grand Prairie Airport Commission. Councillor Logan, could you make that motion?
Thank you, Mayor Given. It's my pleasure to move the appointment of Mr. B. Mulman and Mr. G. Graydon to appointments for the Grand Prairie Airport Commission for 3-year terms.
Thanks, Councillor Radburn.
Pretty close.
Well, yeah, Councillor Logan. And Councillor Logan, I was just going to say you were the victim of a typo there. I know that is a MRS with Miss Moman. That's okay. I got your name wrong, so if you only missed a letter, that certainly is going to be overlooked.
Kevin's fault.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Would take us to Councillor Tarrant for appointment to the Pursuit of Excellence Committee.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'll move that Mr. D. Stobie be appointed to the Pursuit of Excellence for a 3-year term ending December 31st, 2018.
Thanks very much, Councillor Tarrant. Any discussion or debate on that recommendation? Again, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. And we would move to the Revolution Place Advisory Board. Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that the following 9 people be appointed to the Revolution Place Advisory Board for a 2-year term ending December 31st, 2018. Mr. B. Dennis, Mr. J. Smith, Mr. T. Dahl, Mr. M. Moman, Mr. L. Fisher, Mr. R. Kieselbach, Ms. E. Friesen, Ms. K. Dowling, and Ms. J. Winter.
Thanks very much, Councillor Clayton. Any discussion or debate on that recommendation? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. That handles all of our items under 8.1. I just want to thank, first off, administration for handling a new process, which I think actually was very helpful to council in terms of assessing the relative qualities of and areas of expertise and skill and knowledge that the public applicants brought forward. And also managing that process was pretty extensive. I also want to recognize that we had far more names than we had appointments available. And so all of those, of the people that applied to serve on a committee, not all were chosen, and it was a difficult task, I know, for council to go through and make the choice, but certainly want to recognize and appreciate everyone who submitted their name and who is willing to serve and volunteer in their community. Certainly appreciate that. We move to 8.2, recommendation for appointments to the Aquaterra Board of Directors. Councillor Rice.
I move that council approve the reappointment of Mr. Jim Smith, Mr. Dave Ernest, and Mr. Chris Lavoisier, sorry, to 3-year terms as directors of Aquaterra Utilities, effective at the annual meeting in 2016.
Thanks very much, Councillor Rice. And just for clarity on these ones, City of Grand Prairie alone doesn't make this appointments to the Board of Directors of Aquaterra actually by unanimous agreement of the 3 shareholders. But by virtue of this motion, as the mayor, I vote on behalf of the City of Grand Prairie at the shareholders' meetings, and so I will vote the City of Grand Prairie's position and shares as directed by council here. Any further any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries.
Wrong side of the chamber, eh?
Thank you. And I think that handled our 2 additional items that we put on under reports and would move us on into committee business. And the Community Living Committee from November 3rd. If we could get a motion to receive the minutes of that Community Living Committee meeting. Ooh, just remind me, Councillor Tarrant, thank you. I'm still getting used to our new chairs of the committees, so thanks very much, Councillor Tarrant, for putting your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I will move that we adopt the minutes of the Community Living Committee of November 3rd.
Thanks very much, Councillor Tarrant. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? No errors or omissions that we needed to catch? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Tarrant, any highlights that you wanted to share from the meeting?
Yeah, there's a couple great presentations from Big Brothers Big Sisters as well as GP Safe Communities. We were presented with a report on the Hermit Lake Schoolhouse, which council made a decision on in budget recently there, and so I think most of council is familiar with the project. We also talked about an online community calendar, which was an idea presented some time ago, and having a online community calendar that the city would be responsible for, but it would also include a community connections and it'd be a sort of an all-encompassing site. It was decided by the committee that we wouldn't forward anything onto budget this year, but we requested to have a look at what the resources would be should we decide to move forward with this type of project at a later date.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Tarrant. That'll take us to 9.2, Council Committee of the Whole meeting. Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that Council receive the minutes of the Council Committee of the Whole meeting held Thursday, November 5th, 2015 as presented. And just speaking to this as our Committee of the Whole, where we talked about Bear Creek pool options and made a referral to our last week's budget deliberations.
Thanks very much, Councillor Radburn. Any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. It would take us to 9.3, the Community Safety Committee meeting from November 10th, 2015. Can I have a motion to adopt that set of minutes? Who's our chair for that meeting?
That would be me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Bill. I move that Council approve the minutes of the Community Safety Committee held November 10th.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Motion carries. Councillor Thiessen, anything you wanted to highlight from the minutes?
Yeah, a couple actually. There's 2 delegations that came in. One sort of a follow-up from our previous council meeting on flashing lights on school buses, sort of taken care of near the end of the meeting. Missed her along the way. And we also had a presentation from a delegation from the Aboriginal Head Start program requesting that we look into traffic safety along 97th Avenue and 101st Street, which is right across the street from a daycare / preschool, the Aboriginal Head Start school program. So we had moved that the administration would look into that and see what kind of options we'd come back and report back to committee. Finally, we got a downtown rehabilitation streetscape upgrade presentation. It was brief and we moved it on to a further meeting held later in the week.
Great. Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. And we'd go to 9.4, the Corporate Services Committee meeting. Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move Council receive the minutes of the Corporate Services Committee meeting held Tuesday, November 10th, 2015.
Thanks very much, Councillor Radburn. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Radburn, anything to highlight?
Three things, Tyler. Mayor Gibbon, thank you very much. First of all, we talked about adjustment to the procurement process criteria to include climate change as part of the criteria. Particularly with respect to our RFP process, we did direct administration to develop a greater focus to a couple of the statements on the criteria rather than the broad statement that was included now. So that'll come back to committee. We received the unaudited financials to September 30th. At that time, I think it was mentioned at budget, we were looking at a $2.8 million surplus year end in 2015. And finally, we received as correspondence a request from the Masonic Lodge, request for property tax relief. That letter was received for information, therefore no action, and so the request will be denied at this point.
Thanks, Councillor Radburn. I think that handles all of our committee business. We had no items of correspondence this evening, and we had just the one delegation presentation. Ms. Maverick from the Community Foundation with regard to vital signs. Councillor Thiessen.
I'd just like to take that report in for information, if we could.
Okay, motion to receive for information. Any discussion or debate? Seeing nobody ringing in, then I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. We had no notices of motion this evening, so we would move into council member reports. The first up is Community Futures of Grand Prairie Region. Councillor O'Toole.
Thanks very much, Mayor Gibbon. I attended my first Community Futures meeting last week. It was a great head start. We were able to look at a couple of cases where money is being requested from current customers, and it's pretty interesting how the process goes and the research that this group of people put in. And I'm looking forward to playing a part of this role in the next year or two. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. The next up was Grand Prairie Sports Council. Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, Mayor Gibbon. Pleased to report on the my first Grand Prairie Sports Council meeting of November 9th. Three items. One is just a reminder that Try It Day is November 21st. We had 370 participants, and we're expecting another 150 or so, so we'll have over 500 participants in different sports across 12 facilities in the city and the county. Also, just a little bit of an update on the Recreation Master Plan. Actually, the Sports Council helped in terms of facilitating different sports groups being involved in interviews for that master plan. Thirdly, the 2018 Alberta Summer Games bid was completed and I guess delivered to actually in Calgary the day, I think it was the 13th was the deadline. And finally, we received some information on physical literacy, and there's a workshop that Carna had attended. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Radburn, and keep your mic on because I think you're next up with the library board as well.
Great, thank you, Mayor Gibbon. Again, this is my first library board meeting. The meeting, in addition to the director's report and the year-to-date financials, we viewed and reviewed 7 policies: board membership, policy making, library programs, health and safety, working alone, and violence and harassment. And finally, we started a discussion on library memberships and future in terms of what other libraries in Alberta are doing. And we look forward to that further discussion in the spring. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Radburn. I think that was all of the external reports that we had tonight, unless somebody wants to tell me otherwise, if there's something we missed. Councillor Tarrant?
Given I'll just report, I was able to attend my first meeting of our Economic Development Advisory Board, and it was good attendance there, and it was we had a good chat about regional economic development, and there was also a little bit of a discussion on going forward. Our Economic Development Department is going to be working on a long-term economic development plan, and the council's or the advisory committee is going to be involved in those discussions, so it's good to get a little bit of a highlight on what's going to take place there.
Thanks very much, Councillor Tarrant. Any other external agencies, boards, or committees that we need to report on tonight? Councillor O'Toole.
Yeah, Mayor Given, I just want to report on the Philip J. Currie Dinosaur Museum. This will be my last report, as the building committee is going to be signing off the building from the county to the society and at the end of the month here. And I just wanted to let you know that the building's been in operation. We've had over 36,000 people come through the doors since the beginning of September. And I will be still on the board as the secretary of the society, but not as a council representative. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Any other external agencies, boards, or commissions? ABCs? Seeing none, then we'll move to council member roundtable, and we'll start with Councillor Thiessen.
Sure, thank you, Mayor Bill. Yeah, it's been a busy couple of weeks with budget and everything else in there, but I'd like to highlight a few events that I went to that were really memorable for me over the past 2 weeks. Going back to not this past weekend, but the weekend before, November 6th and 7th. On November 6th, me and my family, or my family and I, were able to take in the debut performance of the Alberta Symphony Orchestra at the Douglas J. Cardinal Theatre. In attendance were Councillors Terrence O'Toole and Jackie Clayton. To witness that performance, which was astronomical. It was mind-blowing. I was really honored to be able to bring my son to such a, I'd say, world-class, talented event, at least for the people on stage. And I'm proud to say that it was a sold-out show. So the arts are alive in Grande Prairie, especially in the realms of classical music and otherwise. And speaking of another full house, I had the opportunity to also be a judge at Peace Country Idol the following day on November 7th, where I had the arduous task of sitting with 2 other judges and doing my best Simon Cowell impersonation without the scowl to try to pare down 32 semifinalists into 16. And honestly, ladies and gentlemen, I must tell you, the talent in this town is astronomical. They have their finals coming up this weekend. I'll be a judge for that as well. But of the 32 acts, probably 24 should have went to the final. So it was really, really tough on the judges. And the cool thing was that most of the participants were teenagers, anywhere between the age of 10 and 19. So we got a really strong arts and culture scene burgeoning from the ground level up in Grande Prairie. And finally, I had the opportunity to bring greetings to the Hindu Association's Diwali Festival of Lights this past weekend that I attended with Councillor O'Toole, and I was able to give greetings on behalf of the city there also. Such a phenomenal event, and totally a cultural eye-opener. You know, I've always been a big fan of Gandhi, but I've never really taken in any of the cultural aspects of India or the Hindu religion, and to be a part of a festival that celebrates peace over war, love over hate, light over dark, is totally right up my alley. And then finish it off with fireworks. It was truly an honor to be there, and thank you, Bill, for giving me the honor of being able to light the lamp, and thank you to the Hindu Association for inviting us. I encourage any member from the community to take part in their next year's festival.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Just speak to 2 on October 28th to November 2nd. I went to Quebec City for the first of a Francophone Cities Network conference. Also attended with Councillor Tarrant. I would say a few things I want to speak about. This is very important. 4 things. There's 3 mayors, the mayor of Quebec City, the mayor of Moncton, and the mayor of Lafayette, Louisiana, that started this process. And the mayor of Lafayette, Louisiana, spoke no French. It was about the French and how it was suffocated, and it's coming back in Louisiana, and his past was French. So this is about a network you don't have to be French to go to. So anyways, that was good to know. The other thing was about our community. We have 2,000 French children in the city of Grande Prairie. After grade 9, they're done. There's not too much French in the high schools, depending on which one you go. We don't have a French high school. So I look forward to building on that. I talked about that at the conference, but how proud I was with the French immersion. The biggest growth we have out of 33 million French in North America is Anglophone parents putting their children into French schools to become bilingual. But we don't have the support network to maybe grow it and to learn how we can speed up the process after dinner, how we can teach and learn. One thing that's lacking in our community is a parent, Anglophone parent, get together a family for Francophone cities to grow in our network for French immersion, and I hope to be a part of that in the real near future. And the other thing I was glad to see, with, well, of course, Quebec City, one of the most beautiful cities in our country, and I mean historically. But any values about Quebec City and negativity, and you can say rednecks or whichever, is totally wrong. Quebec City is an open and generous city. Met people there that worked in Grande Prairie that moved back to Quebec City, that spoke very highly, asked about the storm, and individuals that wanted to give me a ride back to certain places, thought I was stranded. They were so open there, it was unbelievable. So I'd say anybody from Grande Prairie or Grande Prairie area, if you want to go to a place and feel real welcome, go visit Quebec City. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor McLean. Councillor Logan.
Thank you very much. Along with, I'm sure, most of my colleagues at the table, I attended the Remembrance Day ceremonies, and as always, very emotional ceremony, celebration. November 12th and 13th, again with all of my colleagues, we sat around and enjoyed ourselves for many hours over the 2 days on the budget review. And finally, earlier today, I participated in lunch at the Elders Hostel and appreciated their hospitality very much. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Logan. Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor. Given many of the things that I attended in the last few weeks have already been announced, one thing I will briefly highlight is I had an opportunity to attend on behalf of the Mayor Forestry Day at the Legislature. And after that, at Legislature, where forestry was recognized within Legislature meetings that day, I also met with the AFPA, the Alberta Forest Products Association, where we discussed many various things, including the renewable resource sector that forestry is, about how they plant twice as many trees as they harvest, and about that 15,000 people or Albertans are directly employed in forestry, and there's 30,000 additional jobs. As well, we talked about collaboration between the federal and provincial government in regards to the hectares of forest across Alberta. So it was a really productive day, and I was glad to have the opportunity to attend, and I think everything else has been covered. So that's my report.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Tarrant.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Just touch on a couple of events. I was last week was able to attend PARDS. They had their 18th annual fundraiser, and a great event. Lots of generous people out there, and it's amazing. Even in a downturn, people are willing to open up their pocketbooks and give to such a valuable organization that provides a great service in our community. It's fantastic. Also want to touch on what Councillor had mentioned. We were able to attend the inaugural conference of the Francophone Cities Network in Quebec City. I think it was a fantastic time to meet with mayors and councillors from across North America, and not only to talk about the French history and culture, but to talk about other issues as well, and see how cities are coping and dealing with a number of things that are very similar to Grande Prairie. I'll also let council know, since we're a signatory to the Francophone Cities Network. We are listed on their website, and if you go there, there's a couple dozen cities that are listed, and we're displayed there, and eventually it'll be a tourism promotion site, and so we'll be promoted. There's 275 million French-speaking people in the world, and a significant part of French tourism is going to places where they can celebrate French culture and history and heritage across the world, and so this will be an avenue for people to draw people to the region and to the city, and look forward to working within the network and working with our French Association to see what more good things can come out of that. So that.
Thanks very much, Councillor Tarrant. Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Just two things to highlight. In the interests of equal time, I will share that Councillors McLean, O'Toole, and myself attended the Remembrance Day ceremonies at the Sanitaf. And it was, again, very, very well done, and actually a beautiful day. And the other thing I wanted to highlight is that yesterday I attended the World Prematurity Day proclamation. It was actually a graduation tea held in the auditorium at the hospital for his children who are born early. And highlight for me, obviously, was one of the mums spoke and shared their journey with their very young one who had spent a number of months in the hospital, but now is doing very well. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Radburn. Councillor O'Toole.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Lots of things that I attended were already covered, but I will cover one event on November 6th. I attended the Center of Newcomers open house. They had a cake cutting and just a bit of a storytelling of all the people that they've sort of introduced to the city of Grande Prairie and area, and it was a great news story. Councillor Radburn joined me there. And also today we did the Métis flag raising ceremony. This is the 3rd annual one, and it looks like it's going to be a tradition, and it was very well attended. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Councillor Rice.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Thanks very much, Councillor Rice. That's not much. That's true. Thanks, Councillor Rice. So I'll just report on a couple items. The first is the opportunity that I had to attend the National League of Cities convention in Nashville. This National League of Cities is the U.S. equivalent to FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And since I didn't attend the FCM this year, I chose to attend the National League of Cities. I'm going to send a report with some of the findings and information that I had to council by email. But I just wanted to highlight a couple of the sessions that I attended. The first was the one that caught my attention when I first found out about the conference, and it was entitled City-County Consolidation, a Historic Decision. The city of Nashville, as we all know it, is actually the metropolitan government of Nashville and Davidson County. They were combined under one local government structure over 50 years ago. It was interesting to note that that process involved a citizens panel that proposed a structure to the public, and it was voted on. And the first time around, everybody absolutely supported it. The two newspapers that couldn't agree on anything else both agreed that it was the right way to go. Both the city government and the county government agreed that it was the right thing to do. The labor unions did, and everything else. And the vote failed when it came down to a vote of the public. The second time around, the city didn't support the consolidation. In the intervening years, they moved on and just did significant annexations, which they had the ability to do on their own without approval from the state government. And they added on some additional taxes. But the second time around, the city was not in support of consolidation. And that time the vote passed with the public. Interestingly, they have the third largest council in the United States. They're the 7th largest city, but they have the 3rd largest council behind only New York and Chicago at about 40 members on their council. There are 35 wards and then 5 at-large positions. And that was actually increased. The first time around, the first proposal had 24 members on their council, and that was rejected by the public. And so the view was that this large council was a compromise position, and that's what gained the public support for it. Interestingly, that the public in the area have consistently rejected the idea of going to a smaller council, and I think it's a demonstration that representation matters. So there were a number of other lessons that came out of that. There are also a number of lessons on sessions on technology, and one of the most interesting to me that I wanted to pass on to council was around technology and the sharing economy, things like Airbnb, Uber, and other apps and ability to share private resources. And it was interesting that when the presenters were asked what's the biggest thing that municipalities need to be aware of or need to account for with regards to technology, they said autonomous vehicles, driverless cars are the biggest thing that municipalities and the general public don't understand how quickly they're coming. They said, you hear about them, and we're hearing about them more, but you don't understand how quickly they will actually be on the roads. And so one of the panelists even went so far as to say that if you're a municipality, you should think carefully about investing in additional lanes for traffic and constructing additional parking facilities. Because in 15 years, those might not look like wise decisions. So I found that really interesting, obviously bleeding edge, and I don't know if they'll come up with an autonomous lifted diesel truck for the Grande Prairie market or not. We may be safe for a little while, but it was just interesting to hear that the view, especially out of the United States, is that technology is progressing a lot more rapidly than we thought. To be really brief, a couple of other events that I attended. that no other council members did. On the 12th, I was here in the city and attended the 80th anniversary celebration for Fletcher Mudrick, the accounting firm here in Grand Prairie. They've been in continuous operation under different names over the years, but in our community for 80 years, and certainly want to recognize that as a long-standing Grand Prairie business. And on the 13th, in a similar vein, I attended to make a proclamation for the Estate and Financial Planning Week here in the Grand Prairie region. And I think with that, we'll call our meeting adjourned. Thank you.